Hello and welcome to another episode of Techification. In this video, we're going to be learning how to do 3D animation in Blender. So the first animation is going to be what's called the yellow submarine. This comes from a course called Blender 3D Design by Neil Hersig. I hope I pronounced his name right. And I'm going to be taking you through it. So the first thing I'm going to do is click to load the default cube, and we will be downloading the image shown on screen now, and that will be what we will use to model our yellow submarine. So when you first open Blender, press the X key and then click delete the default cube, and then we are going to find the background image, and I'm going to download it, and I will be right back. Okay, so I downloaded the image. So now I'm going to go down here and go into UV/image editor, and now I'm going to go image, open image, and now I'm going to go into my downloads where it's saved, and yellow sub it's called, and say open image. So this is the image that we downloaded. So now what we're going to do is we are going to go back to what's called the 3D view, which is right here, so we can have a 3D view of whatever scene we're working on. And what we're going to do is up in the plus sign right here, we're just going to drag out and then go into background images. And we're going to say add image, and right here with the two little arrows we're going to say yellow sub.jpg. Now what we can do is we can check off background images, and then we can change the from all views, we can say only the left side. So it'll only display the image when it's in left side orthographic view, it's called, and I will show you what that is in just a second. So now if we go into, so now we can actually, we'll leave this up here, but I'll just make it a little bit smaller. And now we can go into view and then left for left view, and then change, if it doesn't show up, because we can see we're in left perspective right now, so we can go into left orthographic, it's called, by pressing numpad 5. And to zoom in a little bit, I'm going to pinch to zoom on my MacBook. And please note that the image here will not render in the final image, so nobody else will be able to see it. It'll simply be a guide. So here we can change the size to 7. And you basically just click on it, and then you can type in whatever value you want, and then press enter. And now we can play a little bit around with Blender before we get too much farther into it. So what we can do is we can go change the view to front view, and now this is the 3D cursor, so this thing, so I can click and it will go to that spot. So if I click Shift A, then I can add an object. So I can go down and say UV sphere, and this will add a sphere to our scene. So over here we can change the segments to 20. So we can use the arrows or just type in 20, and the rings to 20. And then we can zoom in a little bit, and we can tab into what's called edit mode, where we will be able to change the sphere further. So we use tab to get in there, and now we can actually select vertexes and faces within edit mode, and we can say A to deselect all vertexes, and Z so we can see right through the sphere. So this is what's called, so tab toggles between object and edit mode, and Z toggles between wireframe and solid shading mode, it's called. So we can go into object mode and wireframe, and now I want to show you how to move objects. So I'm going to go back to front view, and if we use we can zoom out a little bit. So I can use the red arrow to move the object left and right. So try that. And then I can use the blue arrow to move the object up and down. This is along the X and Z axis. I can also use the G key. So if I click that, anywhere I move it, the object that's selected will follow. And of course, Command Z, or on PC, Control Z, is undo. So what I can do is, if I move it and I'm not happy with it, I can actually just press escape and it goes back to where it was. The next thing we're going to be looking at is scaling. So if we press S, then we get this, and the farther away we go from the object, the bigger it gets, and the closer we get to the object center, the smaller it gets. So we can play with that. And just like with translate, we can hit escape and it will reset it. And the last one is R. So with R stands for rotate, so we can rotate it around, and then we can undo that by pressing Command Z. So one more thing, or a few more things before we get started. We can, if we go down to item on the right side, we can rename sphere to say ball, and just press enter to change it, and it appears here in our scene overview of all the which contains all the objects in our scene. So now we can say, let's look at rotating. So we can say rotate, or R, and then Y, keeping it along the Y axis, and then we can say 90, and it will rotate 90 degrees along the Y axis. So now we can undo that, or we can, with Control Z, or redo it with Control, or in my case Command Y. Sorry, on a Mac it's Control Shift Z. And now we can get started with actually creating our yellow submarine. So now we can press the X key and say delete. So now that you have a basic understanding of how Blender works and the sorts of manipulation you can do with objects in Blender, let's actually start making our yellow submarine. So I'm going to go back into view and then left view and zoom out a little bit. So here's our wonderful image. And before we start anything, I'm gonna save by hitting Command Shift S, and I'm gonna save this to my desktop, and I'm gonna call this yellow sub.blend. So I can save that. So now that I've saved it, on a Mac it's Command Shift S, on PC it's Control Shift S. And that is saving. So next is modeling. So like I said before, we're going to go to left side orthographic view. So if you're not in orthographic view, which is stated up here, then you can go to view and press view perspective / orthographic until you are in orthographic view. And next we're going to change this down here, the viewport shading. This is the viewport, by the way. And we're going to say solid shading. And then we are going to put the 3D cursor sort of right where this line is. And we're going to say Shift A. And we are going to add a circle. So you'll notice that you won't be able to see the circle because it is laying flat. But right now we just see a line. So over here we're going to change the vertices to 20, and on the right side we're going to go up and set the rotation on the x-axis to 90 degrees. So now it's a vertical line. So now we can zoom in, and then to move down you actually just go shift down, and I must have tilted it a little bit, so I'm gonna fix that. So now then we can actually press S to scale this, and I want to, between scaling and moving it up, I want to get it so it's about the height of the submarine. So I'm just going to do that. So something like that. So this will be forming the main part of our submarine. So once you're done that, you can press A to deselect the circle. So now we have this line right here. And we will tab into edit mode, which gives us all these points. So now if we press E to extrude, it's called, and then Y to keep it along the Y axis, then we will do it until about right until the corner. So we can actually take a circle or a square or any face and extrude a new shape out of that. So then if I rotate this, then now we have a circle that has sides, which is really cool. So now let's go into, and I suggest you try that as well. So if we go back into left side view, then we can go into wireframe mode, so Z, and we will deselect the vertices. Now we will do what's called box select, so I just press B for box select, and you just click and drag a box around them, and what this does is it not only selects the ones in front, but also the ones right through it, or sorry, on the other side of it, so that we select the whole circle, not just half of the circle. And this only works in wireframe mode. The idea of going through it, if you try and box select in solid shading mode, then it will only do what is visible and not right through it, which is the advantage of being in wireframe and doing box select. You'll see what I mean later on. So now we're going to extrude again and press Y to keep it along the Y axis, and we're going to go until about here. And now, since only these are selected, we can actually move these down a little bit, and we can scale them and move them until it fits in the yellow submarine outline. So now what we have is we have something like this. So you can see how it's selected all the way around as opposed to just half, which is exactly what we want. So if you're getting just half of the object, then you most likely didn't go into wireframe mode, or you most likely didn't box select the vertices. So now if we go back into left orthographic view and back into wireframe mode with Z, then we can extrude again with E and something like that, and make it a little smaller. And to move over, once again, I'm going to go hold down Shift and drag on my trackpad because I'm using a Mac. And on Windows, then you use the numpad. I believe it's Shift 6, Shift 4, Shift 8, and Shift 2 to move left, right, up and down. And then up, down, left, 8, 4, 2, and 6 just to rotate. So now we can, you guessed it again, extrude again and scale this down. Something like that. And extrude And one more time. So now let's go like this. And I will go right to the end, and then I'm going to make it much smaller. Something like that. So now, if we go out of wireframe mode and we rotate this, we have what's going to be the front of the submarine. So let me press A to deselect these. So that is what it looks like. So let's go and continue on. So I'm going to go back into edit mode with tab, we'll go back into wireframe mode with Z, and this is a perfect opportunity to save. So I'm going to say Command Shift S. Sorry. I'm going to say Command S and just say save over. It'll give you the path where the file is located, and just click on that and it will write over that file. So now what we are actually going to do is we are going to form the back of the submarine. So we can go, so make sure you pressed A to deselect all of the vertices, otherwise you'll end up with something really weird and not submarine-like. And of course zoom in with by pinching to zoom or by hitting plus. And we are going to box select with B the back vertices. And let me just show you, it did in fact select all of them all the way around. And if I were to box select in non-wireframe mode, then you can see it doesn't select these ones. So then if I extrude, it'll only go from here outwards and miss this half, in which case we'll have half of a submarine, which is not what we're looking for. So A to deselect all, so almost made that mistake. So Z, and then to go into wireframe mode and box select all, and now we're going to extrude along the y-axis. So you just hit Y. So now I'm just going to keep on going and scale this one down and move it. It's a little bit too small, something like that, and same thing. So you can, if you need the shortcuts, I will leave them on screen while I do this, so you can follow along. And now just keep going. And just skip over don't worry about the propeller, we will do that later. So now, of course, to make the end, you just scale it up a little bit. Try to make this as exact as I can. If you need to move it, you can use the green arrow as well as the blue arrow. They are both there for your utilization. So let's go like this. So something like that is what you should have in the end. And then if you go out of wireframe mode and you pan around, it should look something like this. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to zoom in to go back into left orthographic mode, back into wireframe mode if you aren't already, and we're going to zoom in to focus on the rudder area. So something like that. And we're going to box select with B the middle ones like this. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use the green arrow and move them along the y-axis just like that. and then we can press A to deselect them, and press B and then select the middle ones at the end and move them so they are a little bit something like that, and A to deselect. So now you can see that what we created is where the rudder is going to go inside this little area at the back of our submarine. So now, go back to left, I'm going to move over to the nose of the submarine where we will fix that. So if I go back into wireframe and box select the end and extrude just a little bit along the y-axis, then I can go up here and, where is it? Merge at center, and what it does is it creates a point in the middle. So all those are merged to one vertex, and I can move the point in if I want to. So now what we have created is one solid object that has a point and does not have a hole in the front, although it still has a hole in the back, but that's okay. So at this point I'm going to save my Blender file with Command S, or in your case it might be Control S depending, and over here I'm going to go down to Item and recall this circle Submarine. And to think all of this came out of a circle. Very impressive. So now we're going to go into top view, and right about here we are going to press Shift A. By the way, you have to be in object mode now, so, and not in wireframe. So Shift A, add a cylinder, and this will add it right where the 3D cursor is, which I placed right here. So now over here we can set the vertices to 12, and the other two we can leave the same. So now if we kind of pan over and go into wireframe mode, you can see it put the cylinder right in the middle of our object. So what we want to do is we want to use the transform thingy, we can say left, to put it right on top of our object. And now if we zoom in just a little bit and go up, we can say S with it still selected and scale it down until it's about like, I lost my background, till it's about the same size as one of these things. So I'm going to move it down just like this. And now let's go into edit mode and deselect the vertices. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna box select the top, which again selects all of them all the way around, and I'm going to extrude until, if you run out of screen room, you can actually just move them after the fact if you need to. And now I'm going to extrude a little bit more, and now with these still selected, I'm going to press R and then 45. That will rotate those vertices 45 degrees, and then I'm going to extrude it a little bit more, press R and say 45. So now then we have the periscope, which looks something like this. So now we can go into Item and rename this Periscope, and just press enter to save that. So now if we look at what we have so far, then we have the submarine, and we also have a periscope on top of it. So we can save our Blender file, and now let's go into left side view And let's focus on the rudder area once again. So if we go like this, so left click to get the cursor to go there, and say Shift A and add a plane object. So now so now we can go up here and we can actually rotate the object from here. So we can say Y and 90, and now we can see it. And now we will scale down with S until it's about like that. And we can tab into edit mode and press A to deselect the vertices, and box select the upper vertices and use the blue arrow to move them up, and then deselect them and box select the bottom ones and then move the arrow down. So now if we go into top view and we slide over, then we can see that, and we press A to select the object, and then we can move it, we can see right through the submarine. So now we can make it in line with the submarine if it isn't already. So now I can rotate around and come out of wireframe mode. So now with the box still selected, I'm going to extrude, and I'm just going to do it a little bit, maybe something like that, just so that it has 6 sides. And I'm going to press A to deselect that. So now we can go into the top view again in wireframe mode, and I just want to make sure, press A to select it, and I just want to make sure it's right in the middle of my object. So now we can rename this object Rudder. And if we go into the back view, then we can zoom out a little bit and come over here and press A to deselect it. And we're going to actually tab out of edit mode if you aren't already. And I'm going to say Shift A and add a cylinder. So now if we set the vertices to 12, if it isn't already, and we'll go up here and set the X rotation to 90 degrees. And with S, we can scale it down to something like that, and tab into edit mode and press A to deselect all the vertices. And now we'll go back into our favorite view, left side view, and zoom in a little bit. You don't have to, but I'm going to. And we will box select the right edge, and we can extrude them just a little bit. And we can press S and scale them down. And then we can extrude them quite a bit more along the Y-axis. So now what we can do is we can box select these. So I deselected the right side and with A, and then I box selected this side, and with the green tool I'm just going to move these points over, and now I'm going to deselect, and now I'm going to go into back view and move over so I can see my object more clearly from the back. And now then I'm going to you have to make sure that you box select each of these points, and with the G key I'm going to move them in. And then A to deselect, and then move this one, box select this one, and G and move it in, and deselect and box select and G and move it in, and deselect and box select and G and move it in. So now what we have is the propeller. So now we can go into left side view, and we can box select these points right where it splits and move these over, and that will create more of a propeller type look. So now we can go into object mode with with tab, and then deselect all of that. And now with the, we still need to select it, and in object mode we can go up to transform, origin, and then origin to geometry. And what that does is it creates the center of the object to be in the middle of the object. So we can rename this propeller. And now if we zoom out a little bit and we move this, that's not what I wanted to do. So now we can move this actually into the submarine, and if we go into the back view, then we can slide it over until it's right in the middle. So now if you rotate the view, then you should have the propeller going into the submarine, which is exactly what we want. And now we can actually turn off the background image so that we can see a more, because we are done modeling this submarine. So there it is. I'm going to save it here. And now let's smoothen this thing out. So I'm going to select the submarine by going over here and clicking on it. And then I'm going to go into, it was this one, add modifier. And then I'm going to say subdivision surface. And you can see that as soon as I click that, it made it much clearer. And I'm going to change view to 3 and render to 3. So now we can deselect that and select the Periscope object. And here we're going to say, in shading, we're going to change this to smooth just once. And this will smoothen out the periscope. Now we're going to say the propeller, which for some reason was not named. And we're going to smooth that out. And that is all the smoothening out we need to do. So now we're going to select the submarine. We are almost done, guys. So now we're going to select the submarine and say new material. And now in the diffuse section, we're going to change the red all the way to the right, the green to the right, and the blue to 0, which adds sort of a yellowy type color. Next is going to be the periscope. So we're going to add a new object, click diffuse, and then this time red is going to be 0, green is going to be 0, and blue is going to be 1. And then for the rudder, then add a new material, diffuse, just click on the color and it will come up. Red is going to be 1, green is 0, and blue is 1, which sort of adds a magenta. And finally, for the propeller, we're going to add a new material, diffuse, and we're going to say red is 1, green is 0, and blue is 0, which adds a red. So now we'll save that. So now we're going to do some basic animation. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the periscope, the rudder, and the propeller all follow the submarine. So we only have to animate one thing and they all follow. So what we can do is we can shift select the, I'll rotate so we can see it more clearly. I will shift select, make sure the submarine is not selected, shift select the periscope, shift select the rudder, shift select the propeller, and finally shift select the submarine. You have to do the submarine last. And now say Control P, and say set parent to object. So now if we deselect and just select the submarine, and if we press the G key, then when we move the submarine, then everything comes with it. So I will save at this point. And now we can start with the animation. So down here we have the animation timeline. So I'm going to change the end to 100 frames, and I'm going to go to frame 1. Make sure you're in frame 1, and deselect all objects and select the periscope. And here what I'm going to do is in the rotation I'm going to say make sure that's 0, 0, and 0. And then I'm going to press I and do that on when it asks for a keyframe, I'm going to say rotation. And now I'm going to go to 100, frame 100, and I'm going to set the Z rotation to 3600, and I'm going to press I and add a rotation keyframe. And you'll see what this, so I can play this for you. So now what happens is the periscope will rotate 10 times throughout our animation. So next is going to be so now I'm going to deselect the periscope, because otherwise it will apply more animations to the periscope, and we don't want that. So now we're going to select the rudder object only, and make sure we're in frame 1, press I, and say rotation. And then we're going to go to frame 25, and you can use left and right here. And we're going to say, put the Z rotation to 90 degrees, and we're going to add a rotation keyframe. And then we are going to go to 75, keyframe 75, and we're going to set the Z rotation to negative 90 degrees and add a keyframe. And then we're going to go to frame 100, and under Z rotation we're going to go to 0. And then I and insert rotation keyframe. So now if we play it, then it should rotate multiple ways at going through each of those keyframes. So now I'm going to stop it and go to frame 1. So now I'm going to go into the propeller object at frame 1, insert a keyframe for rotation, then go to frame 100, and the 90 degrees is going to be 3600, and I'm going to insert keyframe with I, and now the propeller should spin 10 times throughout our rotation. So now I'm going to save that, and in the camera, I'll show you the camera. So the scene is rendered from the perspective of the camera, so I can go to the left side and say cameras and align active camera to view. So now we're going to do quad view, which is Control-Alt-Q, and which shows the top, camera, right, and front. And now what I can do is I can, in the front, then I can select the submarine, and I can move it from here, left and right, which will move it away and closer from the camera. So I can do it to right about there, and I'm going to move this one over, and I can move it down just a little bit so it fits in the camera perspective, because this is how it's going to be rendered in the final product. So we want to make sure that that is exactly how we want it. For frame 1, what I need to do is I need to move this. You can use either the right side or the camera side, and I'm going to drag it so the nose is just out of the screen. And then I'm going to say I and location, rotation, scale. And next I'm going to move the submarine. Sorry, go to frame 35 like I said I was going to, And then I'm going to take this and move it over until it's right in the center of the screen. And then I'm going to press I and location rotation scale, and then frame 65, and in the Z rotation I'm going to change this to 75 degrees, and of course I and location rotation scale, and then I'm going to, in the front one, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it. Sorry, first you have to go to frame 100, and then I'm going to move it something like this, and press I and location, rotation, and scale. So now, if we play the animation, then you'll see that the submarine comes into frame, rotates, and then moves into the distance. So the last thing we're going to be doing is the lighting. So I'm going to go back into single view, which is Control Alt Q, or you can find it under the view menu. And I'm going to go back to frame 1. Oh, sorry. And I'm going to go into top. And now what I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to Shift A and add what's called, under lamp, what's called a hemi lamp. And I'm going to, and that is all that we are going to do. So now if we go into render, this is literally just finishing up. So now if we go into render, we can set the resolution to 320 by 240 and the percentage to 100%. And in the output, if we scroll down, in the output, just make this a little bit bigger. We can change this to, I believe it's QuickTime, and video codec as MPEG 4. In the output, we can move this. I'm going to move this to desktop and call this yellow sub, accept. And now what we can do is we can go up here and say animation. So now what this will do is this will render out an animation, and we can see the animation and play it through without having to have Blender. So I will show you I'll show you both the rendering process, and I will also show you the finished animation. So I would love for you guys to try this at home. Tell me what you think of it. Tell me what you think about the tutorial and guide through. Hopefully it was helpful. And even more, I would love for you to, after you try it at home, submit your animation as a video response to this video underneath, so other people can see what amazing animators you all are. Thank you for watching this video, guys. Don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe.